Hey everyone, it's Peter Kerr from Daydream Nation, and I've got back to the channel Mark O'Neill from Pulse 94.7 FM. How are you, mate?
Very well. How are you?
Good, good indeed. Mark, so on the weekend, Black Sabbath played their final concert, the final show. I was sort of reflecting, being a huge Deep Purple fan, that, when it comes to an end, there's a lot of missed opportunities, isn't there, with Deep Purple? Were you sort of thinking that as well, reflecting? Like some bands, they close the chapter neatly and nicely, but with Deep Purple, it seems to be kind of messy and it seems to be going on and on and on, but it's not neat and it's not clean. What do you
Well,
think?
one thing I really regret that didn't happen, Jon Lord wanted every surviving member to do a concert. And I mean, he was the gentleman of the band. He steadied things out when there was the chaos. I don't see why they all didn't jump at the idea. Well, I know Gillan wouldn't with Coverdale. When I interviewed Gillan in person, and I said, "Would you ever, if you were in the same town as White Snake, would you go on stage and do a song with them?" And he just looked at me like he wanted to slug me. He did that a few times, but in with the whole Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing, that was a disgrace.
Yeah,
No,
so he's the holdback.
yeah,
He must be the holdback. But could you imagine if they just, like, the Deep Purple family? We love it. It's huge. It's like a big flowering tree. The roots are everywhere, and they could just have this magnificent concert. Anyone that's been in Whitesnake, Rainbow, Gillan, Hughes for All, Glenn Hughes, but it's the egos, isn't it?
yeah.
It's just, yeah, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame sort of indicates that there's this tension, this animosity. But I just think that the legacy of Deep Purple could have been closed more neatly and respectfully. Uriah Heep are doing their final tour.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're going to finish it up and get folks on stage that can contribute. But like with Deep Purple, it's just like a missed opportunity, isn't it? Because they're not getting any younger and the road will end. But I somehow feel it'll just go kaput. It'll just be sort of, you won't hear from them. They might do a gig in Albuquerque or whatnot, and then you don't, they cancel the tour and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately. And the other thing is how things fell apart so fast after the reunion. I think the biggest mistake was putting out Nobody's Perfect. The only way they were going to regain any momentum that they had was to get right back in the studio. And if they wanted to do videos, fine, not Call in the Wild type videos.
Terrible.
I mean, it was sort of funny that they did a video about not making a video, but no, it was that was their only opportunity, and then they ended up just dying. See, what happened there was a live album often makes or breaks a band. Made in Japan made them. Nobody's Perfect killed them. It wasn't Joe Lynn Turner's album, Slaves and Masters, because that did better than Nobody's Perfect. So he got them back in the right direction.
But still, that tour really flopped. I mean, previously with Gillan, they were playing big venues. I mean, let's go back. We'll go back to 1984. That was the second highest grossing tour behind
Yeah.
Bruce Springsteen.
Mm-hmm.
Big business. The House of Blue Light did not as good business, but still pretty big business. And it would have been a bigger album if Richie didn't injure his hand. I think he injured his arm or injured his hand, and they had to blow dates. So that lost a lot of momentum. Nobody's Perfect. I remember a story where they had a listening party at, what label were they on? Polydor or Phonogram or one of those labels.
Yeah.
And you had all the suits sitting around the table and they're all getting excited. And they played the album, and the looks on everyone's face at the end of it was like,
Yeah.
because everyone was expecting a made in Japan. But I don't know if live albums in the 80s had the same currency as the 70s, because the 70s was the era of live albums. People, Frampton Comes Alive, made in Japan. They were big bucks, but live albums in the 80s were, who cares, sort of thing.
Especially that late in the 80s. Now, I saw them on the House of Blue Light tour in Hartford, Connecticut. And Hartford was, I mean, it was a basketball arena, like Madison Square Garden, much smaller though. I would say at best it was 70% full, maybe less. There were a lot of empty seats.
Yeah, well, from 84 to 87 is a long time in rock.
Yeah.
And, the conjecture is that House of the Blue Light was a weaker album. And it didn't help that The Call of the Wild, which is a woeful song, got pushed out. Bad Attitude was a good song. That was a killer first track. But some of the other songs on the album, maybe they should have picked a different single, but Call of the Wild was definitely not so good.
Yeah, I agree.
And by the time they got to Jolene Turner, they were playing Radio Music Hall and not even filling that out. And Radio Music Hall in New York was only about a 4,000 seater. So progressively, they were going down from arenas to basketball arenas, down into concert halls.
Well, I was there at Radio City, and we were in the upper deck. It was, not big, but we were upstairs, maybe halfway up, and all of the ones in front were full. Now, I also saw them in Hartford, Connecticut. I saw them 4 times on that tour. In Hartford, they couldn't play the Civic Center because the Yes Union tour, where a whole bunch of them combined, they played the same night in Hartford. I forgot the name of the place Purple played, but that was packed. And then they played 3 nights in Philadelphia. I only went to one. I should have went to all 3 at a theater. And that was pretty, I don't know if it was sold out because I wasn't looking behind me, but it was very well attended. And there were 3 shows. So no, it certainly wasn't the Perfect Strangers tour, but for what it was, and with all the bad reviews that the album was getting, it did pretty well. But the album itself, now this is roughly, I think it made in the 80s, whereas Nobody's Perfect made around 120. So it did get them pointed in the right direction.
I'll put another theory out to you. Perfect Strangers, the tour did fantastic business, but it was kind of a one shot. They were a legacy band. They were a heritage hard rock band. They influenced so many of those modern acts. So it not only attracted the older crowd that remembered them and saw them in the 70s, it attracted, for one time, those heavy metal fans that loved the Scorpions, Dio, Dokken, etc., just to see what all the fuss was about. They saw them, and that was it. So it was like a one shot at that reunion. Another factor is that maybe they were a bit hot and cold that tour, because I've seen footage and bootlegs, I've heard bootlegs, and to be quite frank, Ian's voice is up and down.
Yeah.
So there's long been a lot of conjecture that Ian blew a gasket on his vocals in Born Again, that tour. Yeah. And even going back to the Gillan days in the later part, Double Trouble and Magic era, he was starting to really push the vocals out, and he might have blown a gasket. So, you see Deep Purple, you've heard about him, it's on that tour, and his vocals aren't so crash hot. Are you going to go back when it's in 1987? No, I'll see Aerosmith or Guns N' Roses.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of that theory?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. Well, I saw them in '88 at Giant Stadium, and it wasn't their best show, but just going back, with Perfect Strangers, the single was Knocking at Your Back Door, and it wasn't released until a month, maybe 2 months after Perfect Strangers, and it only made 61, even though it was edited to hell and all that. Had it been put out a month before, it definitely goes top 40, and then that's Casey Kasem territory, so he would have had to play it. Who knows what it would have done, but it would have done better than 61 or whatever it made. And the whole momentum would have been different with Perfect Strangers. It would have entered higher. It definitely goes top 10. It would have sold probably another million. And I don't know, who was doing we won't put a single out. That was the whole thing. A single was the first single with virtually every album back in the day was released well before the album.
I'm pretty sure in Australia, and I don't know if you were in Australia at that time, that was the lead single. That was the one they played on Triple M straight off the bat. So that got a lot of radio airplay, Knocking at Your Back Door. Perfect Strangers came later. I would have included Nobody's Home. It's got that really punchy little riff. It's got Ian Gillan doing a classic, Gillan-esque lyric, and it's got the cowbell. Cowbell's always good on the radio. I would have put that, and that would have appealed to the headbangers and the hard rockers. And it's got that classic Deep Purple punchy riff. It's pretty hard to, Knocking at Your Back Door. That goes like 7 or 8 minutes. Great song, but very hard to condense that into a radio-friendly 4-minute song. But they cut the lead break. That's one of the best parts of the whole song.
Oh, I know, but I right from the start, like Perfect Strangers, I don't even know if it was a single in America.
It was okay. Because it was on MTV. That's the one that they play. Where they're you got the hot air balloon, and they're at Vermont and in the recording studio and all that. Yeah, that definitely was the single.
Well, I never saw the single, but even so, that proves, well, it probably shouldn't have been a single, because if you had a first single that almost there was no way it was going to chart, and then put out a more commercial one like Knocking at Your Back Door, you're killing the momentum. You want a hit right away, and then you could put out whatever. But again, I would have went with I still would have went with Knocking at Your Back Door, because it's the Blackmore riffness and all that. And even though it was edited, and Nobody's Home would have been next. And Perfect Strangers maybe the B-side of one of them.
Yep.
But it was just handled so terribly.
I've got a question for you without notice. How would there be any songs you would lose off Perfect Strangers and take from House of Blue Light and make it the perfect hybrid album?
I love the Spanish Archer. It's different than had Rainbow recorded it, because Gillan got to sing his Gillanish part. I think that part might have been a bit better had Rainbow done it. But Blackmore's solo and his playing, that is probably the most overlooked Blackmore song.
I would find room for Bad Attitude.
Yeah, yep. That too. And the video was recorded in my hometown.
That's a very punchy song.
Yep.
And that's probably one of the more radio friendly, but yet got edge and a bit of punch.
Well, now that's a whole different thing. As a first single from Perfect Strangers, that I could see at least making the top 30 if it were released before the album. And then again you're looking at a whole different outcome, because no matter what, the follow-up album wasn't going to do as well. But if
No.
Perfect Strangers sold a million and a half more in America, the House of Blue Light then would have done better.
Thing that spoils House of Blue Light for me is when Lordy does these, gets these modern synthesizer sounds, and they just don't quite. I just like him to do the traditional Hammond or even keyboard, piano. I think him keeping up with the Joneses and doing all these dinky little synthesizer line actually dates it, dates
I
the
wonder,
album.
could he have been pressured to?
Possibly. And even Pacey's drumming on House of Blue Light, the sound of it sounds a little bit, I don't know, it doesn't sound organic. I don't know. It just doesn't sound like the Pacey's drumming in 70s. He's got a very simple, I think he simplified his drumming a lot. And I don't know. I don't like the drum sound on House of Blue Light.
Well,
So,
the drumming bothers me on the House of Blue Light, Slaves and Masters, and The Battle Rages On. Not all for the same reasons. On Slaves and Masters, I don't know what they did to it, but that's not Ian Pace.
well, I think
it's
Richie was asking him to play to a click track.
I
don't know. I don't think that was a very happy album, considering, you know, the circumstances. And to me, it kind of cheapened Deep Purple. Like they were asking all these different artists. There was that guy from Survivor. Who was his name? I think everyone was asked to sing for Deep Purple. For even Jimmy Barnes at one stage was in the mix. But yeah, getting back to it, I think that Deep Purple, I don't know, such a wonderful band, but I don't think they've looked after their legacy, and there's been a lot of bad decision making. Maybe it's the management. Yeah, it just doesn't seem to be, records are being curated like some of those other legacy bands. Mm-hmm. And I think from a live perspective, they really haven't sort of, I don't know, they could have gone out in a better fashion than what they're doing, because I just think they're just basically out on the road until they die on stage. It's a bit harsh to say, but it seems that way.
Well, I don't know who would have known it at the time that Bad Attitude was written about Blackmore. That would have spelled the beginning of the end.
Well, you divorce your wife and then you want to take her out for dinner again. I don't know if it's good the second time. What do you think, Mark? You know, these are like bad. I mean, these are like people that just don't get on.
Well, a lot of things that I say about how I felt at the time, not so much hindsight. But in hindsight, Perfect Strangers should have been a one-off. And then if they wanted to do it a few years later again as a one-off, I think it would have worked much better, and there wouldn't have been, you know, the whole mess that's been going on that followed.
Perfect Strangers, one-off. Richie Goes Back to Rainbow. They could have been big.
Yeah.
And done an album along the lines of Foreigner Agent Provocateur and sold multiple. They were starting to have a little bit of build.
Yeah.
Straight Between the Eyes was a reasonable hit. Ben Out of Shape didn't do quite as well, but it had momentum, and they were starting to refine a sound that was cutting through radio. Have the break with Perfect Strangers, get that whole, Deep Purple thing out of your system, and then come back to Rainbow and and do something as big as Foreigner, Agent Provocateur, or A Journey Raised on Radio.
Well, Stone Cold made number 40. So again, I mention Casey Kasem all the time because I love this show. But I got to hear him play Rainbow once. But that was one of the biggest thrills.
And Gillan do a project with Glover. Gillan Glover. Jon Lord, I don't know. What would he do? He'd probably just go and do some orchestral stuff, or I just maybe once and done. That would have been good.
Although at the time I would have said no, stay together forever, no matter what.
We all want that to happen.
But looking back, no.
Well, they say a souffle doesn't rise twice. Mark, it's a pleasure as always to have you on Rock Daydream Nation. We've just had a bit of a chat about Deep Purple and the comeback and how things just don't turn out the way we would like it to. And anyway, it's always wonderful talking about Deep Purple. Folks, what did you think about the 84 reunion? Do you think it should have been a once and done? What did you think about the subsequent album? We love reading comments. Please check out Mark O'Neill on Pulse 94.7 FM. Check out the website. Please like and subscribe to Rock Daydream Nation. But one thing's for sure, Mark and I will be talking about more things purple and rock in general coming soon. All the best. Thank you.